She didn't leave because you weren't enough. She left because she understood you, and in her world, certainty doesn't feel safe, it feels dull. She wasn't seeking perfection. She was drawn to mystery. And you, unfortunately, became predictable. The world doesn't honor loyalty as much as it respects restraint. And the greatest restraint you'll ever develop is over yourself. You were taught to be kind, to give selflessly, to love without asking for anything in return. They told you goodness would win her over. But they were wrong. Machiavelli wouldn't mock you out of cruelty, he'd simply laugh, because he understood what most men never do: power isn't offered. It's claimed, by mastering the war within. She didn't withdraw because you lacked value. She pulled away because you were always there, too open, too accessible, too easy to reach. You weren't a mystery anymore. You were a solved puzzle. And what is fully known can be managed, not desired. That sparkle in her eyes, the one that once made you feel invincible, wasn't love. It was instinct, the primal spark of polarity. But you mistook curiosity for connection, her tests for tenderness. Machiavelli once wrote, "A ruler doesn't need to be good, only to survive." Survival doesn't come from seeking approval, it comes from inner stillness. From being anchored. Not cold or indifferent, but composed. In the silent battle between men and women, power doesn't belong to the loudest voice or the strongest hand. It belongs to the man who remains unreadable, who doesn't plead or prove. Because worth isn't explained. It's embodied. Women aren't drawn to emotional chaos. They're drawn to steadiness, to the man who feels deeply but doesn't flood. Who speaks when the silence has meaning. Who reveals just enough, but not everything. Most men rush to be seen. They overshare. Over-compliment. Over-confess. Each gesture whispers the same need: please like me. And nothing dissolves attraction faster than need. You believed you were being romantic. But to her, it felt like surrender. She didn't leave out of malice. Her instincts told her, this man is centered around me, not himself. That's not security, it's a warning. No one told you this: attraction doesn't thrive on access. It thrives on tension. It lives not in what you give freely, but in what you guard. Your presence should feel rare. Your attention, earned. What is handed over without cost is rarely cherished. You don't have to be distant, but you do have to be deliberate. You don't need to disappear, but you must be intentional. Because when she looks at you, she's not admiring your face, she's scanning your foundation. Is he grounded? Is he led by impulse or anchored in purpose? If your world revolves around her, she'll step back, not out of cruelty, but because something deep within her recognizes: a man who bends too easily will break even faster. Machiavelli didn't write about love. He wrote about leadership. And leadership starts with self-governance. If you don't master your emotions, someone else will. And the moment she realizes she can control you, she loses the desire to stay, not because she's damaged, but because you gave her power she was never meant to hold. 1. When she tests you, be the wall, not the mirror. She won't announce the test. She doesn't need to, her silence will. Her absence. The shift in her tone, the delay in her replies. Most men misread it. They chase. Explain. Panic. Not out of weakness, but because they've built their center around her comfort instead of their own core. But you must be different. When she pulls back, she's not asking, do you care? She's asking, can you hold your frame? She's not trying to destroy you. She's trying to find you. She wants to know what happens when it gets cold. Do you wither, or do you radiate from within? You thought she was losing interest. You thought you had to win her back. But it wasn't about attraction. It was calibration. Every woman, consciously or not, is scanning for something deeper than charm, leadership. Not dominance. Not performance. but the quiet, immovable authority of a man who leads himself. He doesn't chase clarity. He doesn't panic under pressure. He doesn't sacrifice values to avoid conflict. He breathes. He holds. He stays. She doesn't want another mirror. She already has enough of those, men who reflect her mood, echo her language, adapt until they disappear. That's not strength. That's erosion. And she feels it, not as love, but as burden. Because when you become the mirror, you place the structure in her hands. And she doesn't want to lead. She wants to lean, but only on something that doesn't collapse. So when she's quiet, don't rush to fill the space. When she steps back, don't rush forward. Hold the line. Not as a game, but as proof, you don't need her validation. You generate your own. Her distance isn't a rejection. It's a scan. She's asking, will you lose yourself to keep me? And if the answer is yes, you become replaceable. Because a man who folds under pressure can't be trusted when chaos comes. Machiavelli would call this what it is, a loyalty test, not hers to you, but yours to yourself. And most fail, not because they're weak, but because no one taught them that presence isn't declared. It's demonstrated. She doesn't need your poetry. She needs your poise. You don't prove yourself with words. You prove yourself by not dissolving under tension. Because if she can shake you, she'll never fully trust you. And trust, not love, is what roots desire. When the room grows cold, don't flinch. Don't plead. Don't perform. Be still. Be calm. Be anchored. In your silence, she won't see indifference. She'll see power, not the kind that demands attention, but the kind that can hold space. Because in a world full of noise, a man who stands unmoved is the only one who feels safe. 2. Approval is a drug, and you were hooked. You didn't chase her out of love. You chased her because you were starving, not for connection, but for confirmation. You needed her gaze to tell you that you matter. That wasn't love. That was addiction. Machiavelli wouldn't condemn you. He'd warn you, any man who depends on another's validation has already surrendered his power. This didn't begin with her. It began when they told you that being agreeable meant being good. That being liked meant being safe. That being chosen was the ultimate prize. So you adapted. You performed. Smiled when it hurt. Agreed when you didn't. Gave without boundaries. Silenced your truth just to keep her comfortable. You weren't loving. You were negotiating, trading authenticity for acceptance. Because approval is emotional heroin. 1 hit, you feel real. 2 hits, you forget your edges. 3 hits, you burn yourself out, desperate for her light. Not because she asked you to, but because you believed her attention made you whole. But here's the truth, approval is leverage. Once she senses you need it, she no longer needs to respect you. She can manage you. Not maliciously, but instinctively. People manage what they don't admire. And when you offer up your sense of self for approval, you stop being a presence and become a product. You've seen it before, the man waiting for the text. Editing his truth to match hers. Saying, whatever you want, before she's even spoken. That man doesn't spark desire. He drains it. Because she doesn't want a satellite orbiting her. She wants a sun, burning from its own gravity. Machiavelli didn't write about romance. He wrote about power. And true power comes from detachment from external validation. You think you need her recognition. But what you truly need is your own. If your worth rises and falls by her glance, you are no longer a man, you are a mirror. And mirrors don't inspire love. They reflect it. Until there's nothing left behind the glass. No woman can complete you. She can only reflect what you already are. Come to her full, and she amplifies. come to her empty, and she vanishes, not out of cruelty, but because you gave her a role she was never meant to play. Stop chasing the hit. Reclaim your crown. You weren't born to audition. You were born to reign, not loudly, but certainly. Not to perform for love, but to embody it. 3. She wanted to feel you, not fix you. She didn't leave because you were broken. She left because she could feel you trying to make her the cure. What you called vulnerability, she felt as weight. What you thought was intimacy, she experienced as obligation. You were confessing, unraveling, bleeding in her hands, hoping your openness would win her loyalty. But she didn't want a patient. She wanted a presence. You mistook self-disclosure for connection. But connection isn't built on exposure, it's built on embodiment. On owning your shadows without needing her to hold them for you. You thought if you showed her everything, the pain, the fears, the unhealed stories, she'd see the real you and stay. But she didn't want to be your therapist. She wanted to trust your leadership. She wanted to feel your strength despite the storm, not drown in it with you. Because here's what no one tells you, emotional expression without emotional regulation isn't intimacy, it's emotional dumping. It doesn't deepen the bond. It dilutes it. It's not that she wanted you stoic or silent. She just needed to feel that you had you, that your emotional world was navigated, not outsourced. She needed to sense that you didn't need her to soothe your chaos in order to stay centered. A man who shares from a place of grounding invites closeness. A man who shares from a place of collapse creates pressure. And pressure kills polarity. Machiavelli wouldn't tell you to suppress your emotions. He'd tell you to govern them. Because in matters of power, the uncontrolled become the controlled. And in matters of the heart, the emotionally dependent become emotionally dismissed, not because they are unloved, but because they make love feel unsafe. The masculine isn't emotionless, it's the container for emotion. It's not about being numb. It's about being non-reactive. It's not about hiding. It's about holding. You wanted her to see your wounds and stay. But she wanted to feel your depth without falling into it. And when she realized you were handing her your wholeness, asking her to complete what you hadn't claimed yourself, she felt it, not as romance, but as responsibility. And her heart whispered, "This isn't mine to carry." Women don't fear emotion. They fear instability. They fear the man who can cry, but can't stop. Who can feel, but can't lead. Who opens up, but never integrates. Who confesses, but never transforms. You thought being transparent was being real. But transparency without sovereignty is just glass, easily shattered. She didn't need you to be perfect. She just needed to feel you were anchored. That when your world trembled, she wouldn't have to hold the frame for both of you. Because a man who holds his own weight makes space for her to be soft. But a man who collapses into her softness makes her hard. You kept wondering why she became colder. Sharper. More distant. It wasn't her nature. It was your surrender. Not to her, but to your own wounds. 4. You lead with energy, not explanation. You thought leadership meant words, plans, promises, reassurances. But she didn't listen to what you said. She listened to what you radiated. Masculine leadership isn't verbal. It's vibrational. It's not about telling her you're solid. It's about being solid, so consistently that she feels it before you even speak. You explained too much. You chased her confusion with clarity. You tried to fix her fears with logic. But desire doesn't live in logic. It lives in energy. In tension. In the unspoken current between certainty and mystery. And here's the truth, the more you explain, the more you expose your fear. Not of her, but of losing her. She didn't need paragraphs. She needed presence. She didn't want your arguments. She wanted your aura. Because a man who needs to explain his worth has already betrayed it. Real power doesn't announce itself, it arrives. It doesn't prove, it chooses. It doesn't chase alignment, it embodies it. She tests not because she's cruel, but because she's seeking something deeper than words, resonance. She wants to know, can I relax into his presence? Can I surrender into his steadiness? Can I trust that his calm isn't a costume? Because if you flinch every time the moment tightens, she won't feel held, she'll feel alone. And here's what Machiavelli understood about power that most men never do. Power doesn't respond to noise. It responds to posture. You are trying to win her with transparency. But a transparent man isn't a trustworthy one if he leaks need through every opening. She wants to see your soul, yes, but through the lens of your own mastery. Because she'll never feel safe with a man who needs her for emotional balance. She wants your vulnerability, but only after she's felt your spine. Can you show her your pain after you've processed it? Can you reveal your truth without requiring her reaction? Can you be transparent, but still sovereign? That's leadership. You don't lead her by managing her emotions. You lead her by mastering your presence. She isn't watching your mouth. She's watching your nervous system. How fast you breathe. How you stand when the silence stretches. How still your hands are when her words sting. How rooted you remain when everything in you wants to defend, react, explain. Because that is where she decides, can I trust this man when life gets heavy? And if the answer is no, she'll pull away, not because you're not kind, not smart, not honest, but because you haven't yet become immovable. Machiavelli would say, a man who cannot lead himself will always be led by those who can. And in modern love, leadership isn't a title, it's an energy. A frequency. A way of moving through the world that says, I do not need your approval to stay present. I do not need your validation to stay whole. I do not need your response to remain rooted. That's not detachment. That's grounded masculinity. 5. Attachment is not attraction, reclaiming your center. You thought holding on meant you cared. You thought staying close, checking in, always being there would make her feel safe. But what it really did was signal this, my center is wherever you go. And no woman can trust a man whose roots follow her footsteps. Because what she desires and what she tests for are not always the same. She might say she wants consistency. But if your consistency comes from clinging, not choice, she'll feel it. She'll feel that your calm is conditional. That your stability is situational. That your love is more need than truth. And need doesn't feel like love to her. It feels like weight. Like pressure. Like emotional gravity without direction. Because attachment is not the same as attraction. Attachment says, I need you to be okay so I can be okay. Attraction says, I am okay, and you're invited into it. And that difference is everything. She isn't drawn to the man who clings. She's drawn to the man who chooses, who could walk, but stays. Who could collapse, but stands. Who doesn't orbit her, but shares a world with her, without surrendering his own. You believed showing more would earn more. That if you were more available, more open, more there, she'd feel more secure. But in truth, you gave her a man who didn't know how to leave to return. And return isn't about distance, it's about depth. When you gave her your whole heart too fast, without boundaries, without rhythm, without self-possession. You didn't inspire devotion. You dissolved tension. You collapsed the very mystery that makes a woman lean in. And once mystery is gone, tension dies. And when tension dies, so does desire. Not because she's ungrateful. Not because she's shallow. But because biologically, instinctively, she's always reading this one signal. Is this man centered in himself, or orbiting me? Because the man who orbits her cannot protect her. The man who chases her energy cannot anchor her own. So if you feel her slipping, pulling back, turning quiet, it's not time to push closer. It's time to return to your edge. To the version of you who doesn't react, but remembers. Who doesn't beg for closeness, but radiates presence so strongly that she must decide whether she can meet you in it. Machiavelli would call it strategic withdrawal, not as manipulation, but as maintenance of command. Because when a ruler gives the people everything too fast, they no longer feel loyalty, they feel entitlement. Likewise, when you give yourself too freely, too fully, too fast, without calibration, without discernment, you're not being loving. You're being lost. So reclaim your space. Not in anger, but in alignment. Not with silence as punishment, but with stillness as proof. I am mine first. You are welcome, but never worshipped. This is what she needs, even when she doesn't know how to ask for it. Not a man who attaches from fear, but a man who attracts from wholeness. 6. Masculine energy in a modern world. Lead, don't leak. The world has tried to tame your fire. They told you to get in touch with your feelings, but never showed you how to hold them. They praised sensitivity, but not strength. They said vulnerability was power, but forgot to teach boundaries. So men cracked open, poured out, and called it courage. But what they revealed wasn't presence, it was leakage. And women felt it. Not as connection, but as chaos. Because your emotions aren't supposed to spill. They're supposed to inform your leadership. Modern masculinity isn't about being emotionless, it's about being directed. It's not about being dominant, it's about being anchored. It's not about shutting down, it's about knowing when to open and when to contain. Because here's the truth few will say out loud. A man who bleeds on contact might stir sympathy, but he does not inspire trust. A man who can't regulate himself can't protect anyone else. And a man who wears his heart on his sleeve too soon becomes easy to read, and easier to dismiss. Not because emotion is weakness, but because undisciplined expression is. She wants to feel you, but not all of you at once. Not the overwhelm. Not the over-explaining. Not the apologizing for simply being a man with weight. She wants to feel the edge. The containment. The power of a man who's walked through fire, and learned to heat without burning. She wants access to your soul, but through a gate, not a flood. Because it's not your vulnerability that repels her, it's the lack of discernment in when and how you offer it. Real masculine energy doesn't hide. But it also doesn't perform. It stands. Grounded in purpose. Measured in speech. Open, but not owned by the moment. And this is the paradox. The more emotionally in control you are, the safer she feels to open. Because your containment creates the space for her expansion. You don't need to posture. You don't need to pretend. You simply need to lead, with calm, not chaos. Machiavelli said, "It is better to act in accordance with necessity." And in the modern world, what's necessary is self-leadership. Because if your emotions lead you, you'll always be chasing someone else's approval, attention, or affection. But if you lead your emotions, you become the kind of man no woman forgets, not because you overwhelmed her, but because you stayed solid when others broke. 7. The power of mystery. Why not everything should be said. In your hunger to be understood, you explained too much. You overshared, over-explained, over-expressed. Thinking transparency would build trust. But here's the truth. Mystery isn't deception. It's direction. It's not about hiding who you are. It's about holding it in a way that demands she earns the unveiling. Because not everything felt needs to be said. Not every thought deserves release. And not every truth requires translation. Real presence isn't loud. It's not constant reassurance or poetic monologues. It's the pause before you speak. It's the silence between her question and your answer. It's what she senses, but can't define, that invisible tension between curiosity and certainty. You thought sharing more would make her stay. But in reality, you gave her no space to wonder, and what a woman can predict, she can no longer pursue. Because mystery activates instinct. It's the emotional terrain she wants to explore. And when that terrain is too familiar, too charted, too open, there's nothing left to journey into. You became the map, not the mountain. And no one climbs what they've already seen from every angle. A woman doesn't fall for a man she understands completely. She falls for the man she feels deeply, yet still wants to know more about. And that's the difference. Not withholding to manipulate, but protecting your inner world with intention. The modern man has confused transparency with truth. He's forgotten that discernment is power. Because a man who gives everything away too soon isn't generous, he's unguarded. And a man with no boundaries around his soul may attract attention, but never lasting respect. Machiavelli knew this well. He wrote not for lovers, but for rulers. And what he taught was simple. Power is not about what you reveal. It's about what you reserve. Your attention. Let it be earned. Your story. Let it unfold slowly. Your heart. Let it open to those who have proven they can hold it without trembling. Because every piece of yourself you offer should be sacred. And if you hand it over too easily, too fast, too soon, she won't cherish it. She'll question why it cost her nothing. So let her wonder. Let her lean in. Let her feel your presence more than your pitch. Because when your stillness holds weight, your words become currency. And when your mystery holds depth, your love becomes legendary. 8. Silent strength, how to lead through emotional storms. Conflict is not the enemy. Reaction is. Because the storm isn't the problem, it's how you stand inside it. You were taught to fix. To explain. To make peace at any cost. But peace born from panic isn't peace, it's surrender disguised as love. She doesn't need you to win the argument. She needs to know you won't lose yourself inside it. Because in moments of tension, every word, every look, every breath. It's not about content. It's about signal. And she's watching. She's watching how your face tightens. How your voice shifts. How quickly you abandon calm for control, or silence for pleading. Not consciously, but deeply. In her nervous system. Because conflict is where she meets your core. And if your core wobbles, caves, explodes, or vanishes, she doesn't feel resolution. She feels unsafety. Here's the truth. You don't need the last word. You don't need to over-explain. You don't even need her to agree. You need to be immovable in integrity. That means you speak low when she raises her voice. You breathe when she throws her fire. You stay when her words want to push you away, not to prove dominance, but to embody containment. Because she doesn't want to control you, she wants to trust you. But she can't trust a man who can't regulate himself. And emotional control doesn't mean you shut down. It means you respond from center, not from fear. Let her cry. Let her test. Let her swirl in chaos. Your job isn't to fix it. Your job is to be the fireproof room where her storm burns out safely. Because when you stay calm, truly calm, not passive, not performative, but anchored, you send the one signal she needs more than any apology. I won't shatter when things get hard. And that signal, that's what creates long-term respect. That's what deepens attraction. That's what separates you from every man who tried to argue his way back into her heart. Machiavelli said, "It is not titles that honor men, but men who honor titles." And there is no greater title than being her emotional safe space. Not her therapist, not her rescuer. But the man who can stand his ground with love, not ego. She doesn't want your submission. She doesn't want your dominance. She wants your presence. So when the heat rises,